Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Nice. So let's wait a couple of more minutes.
Sure.
So today it's, let's say, the third day of the Neuroscience Week. We made it.
Yeah. How was the workshop yesterday?
It was good. It was good, both of them. And today, okay, let's start it. I will inform the people. So, welcome to the third day of Neuroscience Week 2025, organized by the University of York, Europe Campus City College. Today we have plenty again of sessions. Mainly the sessions are in person. However, today we begin with 3 online sessions. And then we have a big, let's say, session in the neuroscience lab where we are going to do EEG hands-on training and experimentation. While afterwards, we have some presentations again in the proximal formula building in Alpha 2 physically. And if I'm not wrong, at the end of the day, we end up at the end of the day, yes, we have the neuromarketing. Sorry. No, more is the neuromarketing club. I'm sorry. So today, yes, we are going to have a lot of presentations. Most of them are in physical space. Unfortunately, because many ask, we cannot stream them online. That's why we, let's say, chose to have some of the presentations streamed online, which is the online version, and some others to be on physical, let's say, with physical presence. In any case, today let me welcome again Dr. Ladas. She's an assistant professor at the University of York City College, and she's going to tell us today about the creativity and consciousness, the default model network that connects them. Aristea,
yeah.
thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's just a few of us, but nevertheless, I didn't expect more people who want to attend something about consciousness so early in the morning. The truth is, although consciousness is a very, very fascinating topic, it's actually, as we call it in one of our papers, a chimera of neurosciences, isn't it? So I'm very happy that you're all here. Let me share my screen. We said we share the entire screen. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay.
But I don't know if you can put it in a presentation mode and change slides. Okay, yes. Okay.
Wonderful. So consciousness is my all-time favorite. Different ways that consciousness can be investigated. Philosophy has been investigating consciousness forever. They have developed very interesting theories about the nature of consciousness. And actually, I do genuinely believe that without philosophy, we would not be able to investigate consciousness in the neurosciences. Apart from all the very interesting things about consciousness, namely the fact that we still cannot measure its subjectiveness, its subjective quality or qualia, it's interesting to see how consciousness is interrelated. The neural networks of consciousness are interrelated with other large brain networks, such as creativity. Creativity is another construct that my group and I are very interested in. So today we will discuss about creativity and consciousness, as Mano said, the default mode network that connects them, that's the bridge between them, we can say. And so we would be exploring the neuroscience of imagination and self-awareness, if you wish. Now, this is the paper that we have published in Dr. Klados's journal. He's the chief editor in the Brain Organoid and System Neuroscience journal, a new one. And we thank him for having the opportunity to publish this paper where we investigate, it was a narrative review on the shared neural subtraits between creativity and emotion regulation. Now, out of that, I noticed that, creativity is almost everywhere in the brain. Therefore, it is unavoidable to share some neural pathways with other very large brain networks, such as consciousness. And let's see what are the constructs of today's menu, though, first. So consciousness, one of the definitions of consciousness, which is widely accepted in the neurosciences field. Don't ask a philosopher about a single definition of consciousness, by the way. But in neurosciences, we tend to simplify things. That's not necessarily a good thing. Nevertheless, now the definition widely used in the neurosciences about consciousness is that subjective awareness of oneself and the environment. Now, there are different levels of consciousness or different states of consciousness, as you may call it, like wakefulness, that we tend to name this as the consciousness, although there are debates about that. Self-reflective consciousness states, mind-wandering, which is a different yet state, the sleep stages characterized by different consciousness states, again, especially deep sleep versus the REM sleep phase. They're quite different. Drug-induced altered states of consciousness, such as anesthesia-induced unconsciousness, or different states caused by psychedelics and so forth. We take advantage of the fact that people can experience different levels of consciousness in order to investigate it further. Now, when you hear about consciousness in the neurosciences, you will definitely hear about the so-called hard problem of consciousness introduced by Chalmers. It is a hard problem. That hard problem is about why and how physical brain processes produce that subjective experience of consciousness, the qualia, as they're called, of consciousness. So we do know from two very prominent theories of the neural substrates of consciousness by now, more or less, what are they? So where in the brain can we find consciousness? What are the networks that collaborate in order to bring about that highly subjective awareness or non-awareness? However, we still cannot explain how can this activation of these neural networks bring about the subjectivity? So why does neural activity feel like something anyhow? So neural activity is energy. Why do we feel it so subjectively? How does objective matter generate subjective awareness anyhow? These are so this is the hard problem of consciousness, the unanswered questions, not sure whether we will answer them ever thoroughly. If you remember, we talked about investigating also the brain's aperiodic component in addition to periodic oscillations. Maybe we can find some further answers there about the hard problem, but not necessarily, right? So that's about consciousness. What about the default mode network, another construct that we will be discussing today? Maybe most of you know that network. It's very, very interesting. It's a network of regions that are active during rest and self-referential thought. That is, during inner attention, we can say, when your attention is drawn into your inner cognitive world. Metacognitive abilities are also characterized by activation in the default mode network. The key regions that are involved are the medial prefrontal cortex, the posterior cingulate cortex, angular gyrus, and the hippocampus. And its functions are mainly for mind wandering, for memory, including episodic memory and memory consolidation, imagination, and introspection. Now, in the word imagination, we can imagine that probably creativity could also be involved. Actually, when I read the functions of the default mode network, where I started investigating everything I could about consciousness, it was the word imagination that popped out. And I thought that, cool, you know, probably it is creativity that is involved somehow. The DMN must play an important role in creativity as well. So this is a picture of a very recent paper in the Nature journal that shows what is the DMN within the brain. As you can see, it's quite widespread, different regions involved. What's the role of DMN in consciousness? Well, we said self-referential thought, right? Autobiographical memory is also characterized by activity in the DMN, which also involves episodic memory. So when we say autobiographical memory, we mean that when you're asked to retrospect, to think about something that happened in the past, that you are involved, you were involved in that event, that's autobiographical memory. But the interesting thing is that autobiographical memory does not involve only episodes. It also involves those vague information about your identity, who you are as a person, who you are as a name, and where you're living, and everything related to you, right? What you have been through, many major events in your life, and so forth. All these are stored in autobiographical memory. Therefore, we could expect no less from the DMN, since it is involved in autobiographical memory, than to be involved in the subjectivity of consciousness, right? Because when we say that we are right now, we are conscious, although when we're awake, we're not conscious. Most of the time, we're not conscious. But anyhow, that's a discussion for a different talk, probably. So at those moments when we're awake, those few moments that we are actually clearly conscious, when saying that you're conscious means that you are very much aware who you are at those very small moments. So right now that I'm talking to you, I'm not that conscious of who I am because I'm focused on my presentation. Nevertheless, I can become conscious of myself if I start thinking, I am Aristea Ladas, and I'm right here having this talk in Neuroscience Week. I am Aristea Ladas. That's being aware of your self-identity, clearly and consciously aware, right? So autobiographical memory plays a huge role in that. Also, there are the DMN links to mindfulness and altered states of consciousness, such as meditation or consciousness under the influence of psychedelics when investigated in a controlled manner. Therefore, we can see DMN activation under different consciousness states. Also, there have been some theories, very interesting theories suggested about the role of DMN in consciousness, which they suggest that DMN serves as the narrative self, connecting the past, the present, and the future. And what is conscious awareness, if not that instant connection between the past, the present, and the future, isn't it? So every single millisecond that I am consciously aware of myself, I'm actually consciously aware of my past, my present, where I am right now, what I'm doing, and my future, what I will do next, aren't I? If you think about it, that's what we call conscious awareness, isn't it? And the DMN serves to actually connect information, autobiographical information from the past, the present, and the future. Therefore, hopefully we have established so far that the DMN plays an important role in consciousness and in different consciousness states. Now let's move on to creativity. Now, one of the researchers of creativity has suggested that creativity is one of the things that markedly separates us from computers or other animals. Not consciousness, but creativity. And specifically, it separates us from one another. It's one of the things that makes us human, Softly has suggested. Creativity, excuse me, Now, creativity is a multifaceted and complex process. Actually, I did not expect it to be that complex when we started with my group reading the literature to write that narrative review. It encompasses the ability to think divergently, to make unique connections between seemingly unrelated concepts, and to produce original and innovative outcomes, no matter the field. Does not need to be artistic creativity. It can be of different kinds. Let's see which kinds these can be. Now, sorry, I have to move my pick. So creativity can be expressed in very diverse forms or contexts, such as, for example, in arts, of course, called aesthetic or artistic creativity, in science, like mathematical creativity, like generating hypotheses, like characterizing scientific discoveries, in business, like practical creativity, in your personal life, like solving a personal problem, and in social settings, like adapting effectively into new social environments. Now, the characteristics of creativity play a role in all these circumstances. Another way to categorize creativity is through the 4Ps approach. 4Ps standing for, don't remember them by heart, yes, process, person, product, and press to describe it. So creativity can be viewed as a set of cognitive processes like creative thinking, cognitive flexibility, all the cognitive processes that are necessary for creative production, or personality characteristics, for example, openness to experience, low consensusness, have been connected significantly with states of creativity. As the end product of a creative process, like what you produce through creativity, a painting, a song, and so forth, a motivation to act depending on enhancing or inhibiting pressures of the environment. So this is a different way to categorize creativity. Either way, it seems that, and this is a table drawn from our publication of Harmony in the Brain, these are the brain areas that seem to be related in the different aspects of creativity. And now, as you can see, the default mode network is, of course, also involved. And it seems, regarding creativity, it seems to be responsible for engaging in spontaneous thought and idea generation during creative thinking. Spontaneous thought, any thoughts into mind, what could that be? Ever had a eureka moment in your life? Probably you will. Those of you who have studied for a PhD or are studying for a PhD, hopefully you will have had a eureka, at least one eureka moment when considering thinking about some difficult, some findings that cannot really be explained very explicitly. And then all of a sudden you wake up during the night and you're like, yes, I know what that is, right? So that's a eureka moment. It's also called an aha moment or insightful solution, and characterized by sudden, unexpected realization that solves a problem or generates a novel idea. Now, for a eureka moment to emerge, obviously, we need our creativity function, and we need at the same time actually creativity that is characterized by activation in the default mode network. So this is how the DMN is directly connected to creativity. The dual process theories of regarding the eureka moment suggest that it is characterized first by slow analytical thinking involving the prefrontal cortex, involving executive control. So you start thinking about the problem like consciously, and then you put the problem away, most usually, and you have a sudden insight where the right anterior temporal lobe is mostly activated with large gamma bursts and DMN activation. So that's when you say, aha, actually. The brain regions involved, the right anterior temporal lobe, associating novel connections and metaphorical thinking, the default mode network that is activated during mind wandering, as we said, and allows unconscious recombination of ideas. What happens also when we're dreaming, right? Memory consolidation, a recombination of ideas, a recombination of experiences, and the anterior cingulate cortex, detecting conflicts and signals when an alternative solution comes to mind, and therefore inhibiting the rest of the solutions in order to activate that alternative one. And we said there is also a gamma wave surge after the activation of these regions, which is a high-frequency neural activity, especially in the right hemisphere, which is mainly responsible, at least in right-handers, for creative thought, and signals that sudden gamma wave surge in the right hemisphere signals sudden realization. And then you have dopamine release in the reward system, and specifically in the ventral striatum, which creates that feeling of pleasure when you have that aha moment. So there we go, decoded the eureka moment. And we have seen so far how creativity requires the DMN in order to work more efficiently. And actually, it is the eureka moments that are characterized by creativity and DMN activity. So how it works. First, we have the incubation phase where the DMN works unconsciously when you're distracted. That's why we have the eureka moments when we are distracted. We're not consciously thinking of the problem. We might be cooking, we might be exercising, we might be even sleeping or having fun with someone or some people. That's when your eureka moment will come, actually. So it's like having an unconscious shower of thoughts, recombination of information, and then you have that breakthrough when the brain shifts from focusing on the unconscious effort to spontaneous insight. So you have then a shift from the frontal regions to the DMN and right anterior temporal lobe activation, and you have the eureka moment. A fun yet interesting fact is that EEG studies have shown that people blink more before an insight, suggesting that a brief disengagement takes place before from the external world before you actually have that insight. And that disengagement suggests that you actually shift a state of consciousness, doesn't it? Right before you have the eureka moment. You withdraw your attention from the external world and you turn into your internal world, where the DMN then is the boss. So the ability to generate creative ideas is characterized by increased functional connectivity between the inferior prefrontal cortex and the DMN. A core DMN subnetwork is crucial for creativity, and other recent studies suggest. And another one, even more recent, has suggested that the DMN was actively engaged during both mind wandering and alternate uses task, the most famous test for assessing creativity. So it seems that even very recent research data does support a clear and very strong connection between the DMN and creativity, and as we suggested, between consciousness as well. So the DMN, in essence, we're suggesting, is functioning as a bridge between creativity and consciousness, because both creativity and consciousness involve internal mentation, like imagining things, reflecting on your thoughts, and so forth, on your memories. Hyperconnectivity in the DMN is characterizes highly creative individuals. And these so-called flow states that you're in when you're really, really creative and you're focusing your attention inwards and you have that shower of creative thoughts, that's when actually the attention function and the DMN interact to keep attention, let's say, grossly speaking, inside your mind so as to keep the flow, right? And then someone comes and that's, asks for something like, hey, how are you doing? And boom, there you go with a shower of thoughts, everything goes away, you go, flow states are removed and no creativity anymore. Now, the clinical and practical applications, finishing up, could be, for example, regarding creativity and mental health. We know that there is DMN dysregulation in depression, as opposed to states of enhanced creativity. So therefore, we could test whether actually interventions to enhance creativity could help people with depression. And actually, the sparse studies that have systematically investigated effects of artistic interventions in people with depressive symptoms do show some very encouraging results. And this is where our cognitive training platform also has been based, the CREATE platform, which also involves creative tasks. Enhancing creativity through the training platform that I suggested, for example, through meditation, through mindfulness, through brain stimulation, right? If we enhance creativity properly, then most probably we will also experience the beneficial effects of creativity. We could also think whether can machines replicate DMN-like processes like AI-based machines. Some interesting questions that are yet to be investigated regarding the link between creativity and consciousness are: how do psychedelics alter the DMN to boost creative processes? Can we modulate the DMN for therapeutic creative enhancement? What's the role of the DMN in collective creativity, like team brainstorming? So to recap, the DMN is a crucial hub linking creativity and consciousness, and therefore understanding the role exactly of the DMN within consciousness and within creativity together could unlock the human potential in arts, in sciences, and overall well-being. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aristea. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
You're looking to my site. Probably you share your screen and you have opened my
Okay.
site.
Did I
Thank you.
unshare? Okay, I
Thank you,
unshared,
by the
right?
way. So, yes. So during your excellent presentation, I'm wondering, you mentioned creativity and imaginations, two factions that are probably helped by the use of artificial intelligence. Is there any research study so far that tested if AI is correlated with a decline in imagination and creativity? By Ms. Χρυσοπεδική Βαρδίκου.
That's a very hot topic, actually, and a very, very interesting question. I am not.
After your answer, I would like also to mention something on this topic.
Okay. I'm still not aware of a published study on that, but there could be, because that's a main issue that I have been considering ever since the widespread emergence of ChatGPT, actually. That was my main worry, that we are entering now an era with zero creativity because something else is creating everything for us. Yes, it could reduce, it could reduce original creative output, I would say. And I guess that if that happens systematically, that could also weaken the ability of creativity, probably for people who systematically use AI-based technology to create for them any content that they wish to be created. And it would be very interesting to investigate that. And how is that reflected in the brain, right? Reduced creative potential or creative ability. Wouldn't that be interesting?
I was muted. Yes, indeed. However, there are some studies that have shown that, let's say, AI can enhance creativity actually, but not if it's very, let's say, instructive. Because many creative professionals like artists and so on have reported that the AI have boxed them in. So it's actually the wrong usage of AI and how you use it. And actually there is a very, let's say, relatively recent study from 2023. Imagine that we are in the era of saying that a study published before 1 year and a half, it's relatively recent, let's say that. Because you know how science progress with AI and so on is very rapid. So we, at least in my mentality, let's say in my consciousness, 2023 study seems a bit old. However, there is a study from MIT which has compared and checked the ChatGPT and DAL-E, and they say that they have they use some writers about creative writing and so on. And this helped them to, let's say, brainstorm and
Mm.
break, let's say, through creative blocks and so on. And this made them faster. However, there are studies, for example, in education or in workplace and so on, that indeed support that the passive use may inhibit, let's say, creativity. However, I would like to mention something here and make a parallelism. You know that many people in their, let's say, subconsciously, they believe that, for example, video games are, let's say, a crucial factor for ADHD, for example.
Mm.
However, there is not any study supporting that. Okay, so
So there are correlational studies, correlations, right?
whatever, there is not any supporting this statement that
Directly, no, no, no.
yes, exactly, and that's why I mentioned this, because I don't want to fall in the trap of accusing AI for various other things that we may think that is influenced by AI.
Now, first of all, yeah, of course, it's the use that you make. It's like accusing nuclear technology for the nuclear disasters that have taken place, right? It's
Something
the way
similar,
you
yeah.
use it always. And yes,
Mhm.
probably you can use, I mean, it could be very efficient to use an AI-based technology when, especially when you're in a hurry, and
Mhm.
you want someone to set some boundaries in your chaotic thoughts so that you can build whatever you want to build fast. But on the other
Mhm.
hand, indeed, that puts you inside a box. Still, of course, these large language models need to be further trained, probably by more creative people, because with
Mhm.
today's modern lifestyle does not allow for that out
Let
of the
me,
box creativity very much.
Aristia, let me tell you something. Where I find AI very helpful, especially ChatGPT. You know, we are not native English speakers, and
Yeah.
everything in research, either in publications or funding or whatever, yeah, it's written, let's say, in English language, and I find it very, let's say, not how to say that, it's not fair for non-native English speaker to be, for example, compete for funding with some English native speakers and so on. And for this reason, I found AI that can express what someone would like to say with very nice words and give the full meaning in 100% in a very, let's say, compact script.
Very useful, extremely
Exactly.
useful, right? And I also use AI
Exactly.
technology to my services, right? And nevertheless, I'm
Exactly.
always, given the principles of cognitive training, I'm always
Mhm.
worried what the effects on the brain could be in the long term.
We will see.
Yeah.
The follow-up question is that in that case, would it be an actual, a physical change in the default mode network?
There could be, of course. I mean, the brain is plastic throughout your life, from the moment you're born until the moment you die, depending on your experiences. Also, not only brain connectivity, but also brain structure changes, right? Brain anatomy, the sizes of specific brain regions, and so forth. Therefore, if we use a brain region less, we would expect that this is clearly reflected in the brain in terms both of functionality and of anatomy.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you
Thank
very much,
you.
Chrysopigi. Uh, so let's go to the next. We have the next is Professor Piero Arrico from Italy. Hi,
Good
Piero.
morning.
Nice to see you. How are you?
Yeah, fine. Thanks, Manos. So thank you. Thank you again for inviting me to this very interesting event. So everything
Th-
is good.
th- Thank you very much for accepting the invitation, and I'm very glad to see you after how many years we have to speak? 2, 3 years
Yeah,
we have
it's
to
a
speak.
pleasure. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So Piero is a professor of bioengineering at the Department of Computer Control and Management in Sapienza University of Rome. He holds a PhD in bioengineering from the University of Bologna, and he focused on passive brain-computer interfaces using EEG, ECG, and GSR skin conductance to assess cognitive and emotional states. He has authored over 120 peer-reviewed publications and holds a patent. He's recognized among the top 2% of scientists by Stanford University and Elsevier by the rankings in 2024, and he's also served as an associate editor at the IEEE Transaction of Biomedical Engineering. He's also a CTO and project manager at Brain Science, a leading real-world neurotechnology application company in Italy. Pietro, thank you very much. Your title for today, you are going to speak about passive brain-computer interfaces beyond the lab. Am I right?
Yes. Yes, exactly. Thank you for the very good introduction. Okay, so I will share my screen.
One moment to stop Aristea's screen.
Okay.
Because Aristea is still sharing her screen. Okay, now you can share your own screen.
Okay. So, okay. So let's see if you're able to see my full screen, right?
Of course. Can you change the slides to see the transition? Because
Yeah.
yes, okay, it's good. It's perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, thank you so much again. Okay, so today I will talk. I will provide you. I will try to provide you, let's say, introduction to this to my field of research. Let's say passive brain computer interface, in particular with the let's say particular regard to out of the lab application. So how to move forward, let's say, how to move outside of the research lab, which are the gaps and what we can do, which is the state of the art of the system. And if we are ready, let's say, to go for a consumer market of this kind of system, a part of research, let's say. Just a few words regarding brain-computer interface. Of course, everybody knows BCI is a system that measures central nervous system, in particular the brain, and converts it into artificial outputs for different kind of applications. So replace, restore, enhance, supplement, improve. So there were a huge amount of application under this word brain-computer interface. The first kind of application has been active or reactive brain-computer interface. So the first purpose was to try to make people not more able, let's say, to communicate, make to communicable again. How? The idea was to try to induce, let's say, the user, to modulate his her brain activity directly or indirectly, let's say, in order to provide this bit of communication towards the external world, and the system could try to interpret and recognize this kind of feature, let's say. So you can see here, for example, some kind of example in which you could modulate your activity in order to communicate, to turn off or turn on the light, to move this robotic dog, and or even a prosthetic arm, let's say. How to decode information coming from the brain? Actually, we have different kind of neuroimaging techniques that are available, let's say, for this purpose. The EEG, let's say, in this regard, is one of the most promising techniques because it has several advantages with respect to the other competitive technologies, let's say. In terms, for example, of price, the price is lower with respect to other kind of technologies such as functional magnetic resonance, for example, something like this. It is portable, it is comfortable, and of course we have a very high temporal resolution. How does it work? Of course, everybody knows. So we measure electrical fields produced by the brain by using these electrodes, in which we put some conductive gel in order to enhance, let's say, the conductivity between each electrode and the scalp, the skin, let's say. And we measure different potentials between each of these electrodes and one reference electrode that could be put on bones, for example, so mastoids or earlobes or something like this. Just a fast video, or many years ago, there is a colleague of mine, let's say, which, so you can see, wearing this swimming pool cap with all the wires, We have the gel, of course, the amplifiers, in which there are connected the wires and so on. And you can see then the signal. Of course, as I said, one of the advantages of the AG with respect to other techniques, especially for this kind of application I'm talking about, so out of the lab use, is the portability. For example, I will show you this, let's say, video. We have the honor, let's say, to participate to this study in the first suborbital flight by Virgin Galactic, let's say, and we have been asked as a Sapienza University to measure, let's say, the brain activity of these two Italian pilots, let's say, that you will see here in order to understand any kind of variation from cognitive point of view before and after the flight, after the suborbital flight, in order to investigate the microgravity effect on the brain. You will see these two pilots, that wear the headset, let's say the swimming pool cap, and they are performing this cognitive task during the flight. Okay, this is just to show EEG is a promising technique, of course. With respect to the applications of active brain-computer interface, my research is focused on passive brain-computer interface. What does it mean? It's not anymore the user that try to modulate his brain activity to induce a feedback towards the external world, but is the system, the interface, the HMI itself that automatically, covertly recognize variation in features of brain activity that can be correlated with variation of some mental and emotional states, so-called human factors, let's say, in order to try, let's say, to adapt, to adapt the behavior of the HMI itself, depending on what the user, the operator, is feeling even in real time. Why it is very important this? We have to consider that the most of the accidents in many fields, in many contexts, such as aviation, driving, surgeons, or hospital, and so on, are induced by human errors, of course, meaning abnormal variation of human factors. Too much stress, overload, lack of vigilance, and so on. The idea, let's say, of this kind of passive brain-computer interface is try to measure these factors in an objective way in order to allow, as I said, the HMI to modify its behavior automatically depending on this. But why the performance, for example, could not be enough? Because we can measure human factors indirectly, for example, by using performance measure. I will provide you an example. Just let's think about driving. Okay, when we took our driving license, let's say, at the beginning, of course, we were able to hopefully to respect all the rules, traffic lights, do not kill anyone. So we got the maximum of accuracy, performance, 100%. But everybody knows that after 6 months, 1 year, everybody is able to drive very easily because you do not have to think to anything. Everything became automatic, meaning that you have same performance in both cases, but in the first case, you have this spare cognitive capacity that is lower. If you have an emergency, of course, maybe you do not have the cognitive capability to face with that emergency. After 6 months, everything became automatic, meaning that even if you have an emergency, you can face easily with this emergency. That's why this kind of measure, this kind of technology could be very promising for, especially out of the lab application or real context. How can neuroscience provide benefits? So the concept is this. So we can measure EEG signals, so activity from the brain, for example, by using EEG, we can provide the right biosignal processing in order to extract the right features that could correlate with the variation of these human factors, such as workload, stress, vigilance, and so on. And we can provide, even in real time, these measures in order to inform the HMI. So in the literature, these neurophysiological metrics of human factor components are called neurometrics, let's say. This is a typical neurometrics processing chain from the EEG. So we have the recording of the EEG. Then we have, of course, a step in which we have an artifact rejection, because the EEG in particular is a technique in which we have a very low signal to noise ratio, let's say. And we could have, especially in out of the lab application, where we do not have any control of the situation as it happens in the lab, regarding artifacts, for example, even if you blink your eyes, if you move, if you talk, of course, there are a lot of artifacts that cover completely the cognitive features that we would like to investigate. So this phase is very, very important. Then we have the features extraction, as I said, by using some biomedical processing techniques. And then we could have a classification step in which we are able to associate these features to variation of different human factors. For example, workload, stress, or vigilance, low versus high, low workload versus high overload, and so on. Now I will show you some of the use cases, let's say, that we got for this out of the lab use, let's say, thanks to some European projects in which we had the opportunity, let's say, as a research group, and also from the company point of view, Brain Science, to develop and test, validate these metrics in real context, let's say. This is the first example. The context is air traffic control. You can see the operator here that is doing air traffic management tasks. And we realized the system, a passive brain computer interface system, in which we were able to measure in real time normal load, normal workload, let's say, so in a normal level, let's say, not abnormal, and overload. And we realized, thanks to ENAC, so the School for Air Traffic Controllers in France, an adaptive automation system in which, if the user went in overload situation, what was happening is that they act these adaptive automation solutions in order to help the controller to go back to a normal load situation. And we have demonstrated and published in this paper, let's say, that actually by using this adaptive automation solution, it could be possible from one side to maintain the workload in a normal level, even if the difficulty of the task increases. From the other side, to keep high efficiency with the maximum level of safety, let's say. Then we have this other European project Moto, in which we have used these neurometrics in another way. Let's say, in the previous project, we have used it as adaptive automation, so in this passive brain computer interface way. Here, we have used these metrics, let's say, to provide neuroergonomic studies. That is another field of application of this kind of technology, meaning that, sorry, we are different. We could have different technologies. For example, it has been developed a new technology in this project that uses augmented reality and so on, and we would like to investigate the effectiveness of this new technology with respect to the standard one, let's say. Again, by considering performance could not be enough, no? Because the two technologies could have same level of performance, but, for example, one of the two technologies could induce less load. That is good, because as I said before, during an emergency, you have more cognitive capacities to face with any emergency. And we, for example, demonstrated that the new solution, of course, induced a significantly lower workload with respect to the standard solution, but with same performance. This is another project, Stress, in which we had the opportunity, let's say, to investigate features that are relevant for stress. So stress human factor, so the human factor of stress, of course, is particular human factor. Why? Because it is implicit human factor, meaning that if I ask you, please rate by a subjective measure your level of workload, for example, you can do it because you associate your level of load to the difficulty of the task. But if I ask you, please rate your level of stress, it's another word because, of course, everybody is not able to actually overtly rate its level of stress, but normally it's rated the level of stressor. I provide a trivial example. If you have a lion behind you, of course, this lion induces stress. You are running, But if the lion disappears, of course, you said, okay, I'm not stressed anymore because the stressor disappeared. Of course, it's not right because from the literature, it has been demonstrated from physiological studies by using cortisol assessment or something like this, that the stress remain over time. Okay, by the way, we induced this protocol in which we have an operational task, a traffic management task again. The length of the scenario was 60 minutes, and we had 15 minutes in which we have induced in the first scenario, in the first part, sorry, of the scenario, low stress, meaning typical situation. Typical operational situation. In the second step, we had medium stress, for example, noise in the room, some phone calls or something like this. In the high situation, we added also white coat effect, a subject matter expert behind the operator that was checking over time the performance, meaning that, okay, here you are making a mistake or something like this, in order to induce more and more stress. In the last condition, we removed all the stressors, let's say, and we have again low stress. Okay, in this graph, you can see subjective assessment from the air traffic controllers. And as expected, everything is in line with the scenario stress. In the last part, they said, okay, I'm not stressed anymore. Of course, by using neurophysiological measures, in this regard, for example, we have realized a neurometric that fused the EEG information with galvanic skin response information that are biomarkers of stress, of course, among the other things. And we realized that, of course, during the last condition, the stress was still high. Okay, which was the truth? We assessed, you can see here in this graph, we assessed also the efficiency, the accuracy, the operational accuracy of each controller. And as you can see, in the first scenario in which there was no stress, there was a significant higher accuracy with respect to all the other conditions, even the last one, meaning that as an indirect measure, we could assess that, of course, the effects of stress remain, even if, of course, the stressor disappears. Okay, I just show for sake of brevity, let's say just some example. But okay, we have this possibility to put the humans in the loop by using this system. But how can we do? Okay, so are we there yet? What the technology can say to us to assess if we are really there to use this kind of technology as consumer technology. Okay, actually, this is the main issue, as everybody can imagine. We have the EG swimming pool cap that, of course, could not be useful in any operational context. So just imagine to ask a driver, or an air traffic controller to wear this stuff with gel and all this stuff to measure the neurometric. It is not possible. The solution is here, of course. There are a huge amount of companies that start to provide new technologies to assess the EG in a wearable and more comfortable way. Of course, we have some systems that, of course, does not provide a very good signal quality, other devices that are very good. Of course, as I said at the beginning, the EEG is a technology that has a very low signal-to-noise ratio, meaning that to obtain in the right way these neurometrics, we need a good quality, a research-grade quality. I will show you here this system. Okay, I will present this system that is Mindtooth, that has been developed, let's say, within a fast track to innovation project coordinated by Brain Science Company, the company in which I'm director, let's say, in which our purpose was, from one side, so the purpose was to generate a passive brain-computer interface system usable from everybody without any technical skill. For doing this, we have developed these two models. On the left, you can see the headset. We have developed this headset, let's say, in conjunction with the European Institute of Design. So we needed a designer because, of course, we are engineering. We could not be able to develop something good to see, comfortable, and so on. So we provide the specifics, let's say, in which we would like to have sensors. Okay, we minimized, of course, the number of sensors to obtain, to measure in the right way those neurometrics, and we have realized that this headset, let's say, that is composed by 8 recording channels, 5 frontal and 3 parietal channels, and it is comfortable, adaptable to every head size, hairstyle. It has not have any gel, so meaning that it's ready for out of the lab use. And on the right, you will see the software. This is called Neurometrics app, in which, of course, we have a cloud-based processing in which all the processing is put on the cloud, and we can collect the data, process in real time, and catch back, of course, these neurometrics in every device because it's based on internet connection. This is the loop, let's say, of the system. You record the EEG by using a smartphone, a tablet, and so on by Bluetooth Low Energy. Everything is transferred instantaneously to a cloud by following all the GDPR and privacy rules of the EU, of course, and then you receive back or on the same tablet or smartphone or everywhere, because of course it's based on internet, these neurometrics, let's say. I will show you just some use cases of this technology before concluding my presentation. This is challenges. This is a project, an Italian project founded by my university, let's say, in which our purpose was to test the effectiveness, let's say, the teamwork, okay, of a team of surgeons during real operation. This was the add-on, let's say, with respect to the state of art. And as you can see, they are wearing this stuff. We have recorded also the galvanic skin response and so on during a real laparoscopic operation. So it was a real operation, of course. And you can see here, for example, the main results that we have published this year, that is, okay, our teamwork measure that we, let's say, obtain by combining different human factors by using mutual information theory, we have a very good positive correlation with the subjective measure of teamwork. It was, of course, a work in which we would like to develop and demonstrate the possibility to assess the efficiency of the team, the teamwork, let's say. Again, I'm showing you this video because with the standard EEG stuff, the swimming pool cup, electrodes, gel, and so on, it could be not possible to do this kind of experiments. So new technologies allow, apart going outside of the lab, allow also from a research point of view to do this kind of experiments, let's say, no, that could not be possible with standard technology. I will show you this last video, and this has been developed within the Mindtooth project, let's say the fast track to innovation. It is an application, a mock-up application that we have developed for a training center, a pilot's training center here located in Rome, Urbe Aero Training Center. Just consider that when, of course, this is a system, a passive recompense system for training purposes. In particular, When pilots get training, let's say do training, what is happening that they are in this kind of very realistic simulator with the trainer. They do some hours of training, and the video of the training session is recorded, of course, and after the end of their training session, they do a kind of debriefing with the trainer by looking at this video. What we did was develop this application in which, synchronized with the video, there are also these neurometrics for each of the two pilots. And we have 3 neurometrics for each pilot, of course: workload, stress, and cooperation, meaning the teamwork I was talking about in advance, the efficiency of the team. And I will show you this video in which we have the last part of a particular scenario in which we induced too much stress. Let's say there was fire in cabin and they have to ask for a mayday, and doing an emergency landing. We have destroyed all the instrumentation. They were in the cloud. And this is the last part in which, of course, they was supposed to land. Okay, so they didn't know at the beginning if they are in the right condition. They hope that they did the work in the right way. This is just to anticipate you the context. The pilot on the right, the first officer in this case, is really landing. Okay, the other pilot is providing some instruction in order to accomplish in the right way the task. So I will show you here the video. Now, of course, we are simulating the trainer that is playing, okay, the scenario after the training session, and you will see. Okay, at the beginning, you see the, of course, the workload of both the pilots is high because they don't know if they are good. The stress, of course, of the pilot that is really landing is increasing because it is the last part of the scenario. They don't know if they are doing good. And the cooperation is increasing because they are cooperating. I just pause a bit. In this phase, as you can hopefully see, because I don't know if it's very small, but this phase is called runway insight, meaning that they are outside of the clouds and they can actually see if they see the line strips, so if they did well. And actually they did well. In fact, as you can see, the cognitive stress of the pilots start immediately decreasing, let's say, because he said, okay, fortunately I did well. The workload as well of both the controller is slowing down because the task is going to finish. The cooperation is still increasing because they are still cooperating to accomplish the task in the right way. This was, of course, just another example on how to use in out of the lab this kind of technology. Of course, they are wearing these Mind2 headset I was showing before. This is just the last slide. This is 2014 with the younger me wearing the swimming pool cap with a very, you can see, dirty, let's say, neurometrics. Everything was, even from algorithm point of view, was of course less mature than today. And this is 2025, in which that's not me. Of course, this is the actor that we use for promoting the system with the passive brain computer interface. So this is just to show you the step giant that the technology has been done in this regard, let's say. I conclude with this slide, in which there is my daughter, let's say. It was easier, of course, to obtain the informed consent from her parents. That would like to say you bye. Okay, it was just a funny conclusion to, again, let you know, by using this kind of new technology, still research grade, of course you can do, so we can do a lot of experiments also in some context in which the classical, the typical swimming pool cap could not work, of course. I have asked just later to my daughter, how do you feel? I feel like a superhero, no? So we can provide also this, good feeling when we make experimentation also on babies and so on. And it was my conclusion, Manos. And thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much, Pietro. Thank you very much. If there are any question, please write it on Q&A.
Manos, I have a question. I raised my hand. I can't write in the Q&A right now because I'm a panelist.
Okay.
So, Pedro, thank you very much for the talk. Very, very interesting. I have a quick question about the zero G flight in terms
Yeah.
of gravity. I wanted to ask, did you manage to see any changes in cognitive performance so quickly, so fastly in the flight? Because as I saw, it was just at the time that they kind of, reached the altitude that you probably wanted. So changes, if any, during the cognitive task should theoretically happen very fast. And because I know that sometimes also radiation plays a role in cognitive performance in space, etc. The time wasn't, the duration of the flight wasn't as much. So I was kind of wondering if there were any changes.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for the question. It's a very good question. Yeah, of course, it was a very funny experience, let's say. But the experimental question, of course, that the hypothesis for which we would like to investigate this stuff was that, of course, with zero gravity, of course, it's expected that you have a remodulation, no, of fluids in the brain that could induce, for example, some changes. We don't know. So the flight itself, if I remember well, was like 3-4 minutes at maximum, not too much. And they were asked during the flight to do a kind of multitasking task. They have to do mathematical task, some audio recognition, everything at the same time, let's say. So we actually discovered, of course, we were not alone in this experiment. There was also CNR, so the public research center here in Italy, with subjective measures, with cortisol measures, a lot of stuff, let's say. Of course, it will be done again because we had just two pilots,
Yes.
we could not say anything. But of course, we discovered actually some differences before and after, and especially during, of course, but the bias, no, that of course we have is that, okay, they have this wow effect, no?
Yes, yes,
They are the
exactly,
first
exactly.
guys that are doing this kind of stuff. So we expect to have also a bias induced by this emotional
Yes.
feeling, no, that change, of course, all the features that we are investigating. So we discovered some little changes,
Okay.
let's say not statistical because, of course, they are just you, but it is planned to have more flights, which we could do again the experiment and try to assess something more stable, let's say, also from a scientific point of view.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Very
You're
interesting.
welcome.
Thank you, Pietro. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Here, I have another one question, which will be the final, because we're out of time. So it says, based on the aging neural markers, are there any interventions, goals, targeting, modulating the aging markers by using non-invasive electrical stimulation?
Sorry, I didn't get well the question, Manus. I didn't.
So actually, what this person asks is if based on these neural markers, are there any intervention that tries to modulate the EEG markers by using non-invasive electrical stimulation?
Okay. We did investigate this. Of course, it could be, of course, possible for sure, because as I said, these stuff that we are using now, and that's why we have developed within this project, because there was at the time there was not any other kind of stuff that had enough quality, let's say, as a research grade stuff. So we expect to be able to do this because it has the same quality, let's say, of the other AG stuff. We have demonstrated this. So I think so. So thanks for the question. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Pietro. So some comments from the audience. Thank you very much for this excellent talk. We
Thank
are
you so
grateful
much.
for the opportunity given to us from you to be informed about this amazing innovation. Pietro, indeed, it was amazing. The innovation that you produced in Sapienza in brain science is also amazing. and I was glad that I saw your presentation. I got updated about what are you doing, and I'm very glad for you. So I hope you the best for your next plans, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for inviting me. Okay.
Thank you also.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So, bye-bye. So the next talk is again by Dr. Ladas, who is going to speak about the neuroscience of dreams.
Thank you, Manos. Hi,
Hi,
everyone.
Ariste again. So you can start.
Thank you. Okay. Another all-time favorite of mine, of course, directly related to consciousness, the neuroscience, not only of dreams, the neuroscience of sleep and dreams, rather, we could call it. Very little things actually that we know of why we need sleep, as opposed to other behavioral phenomena that are being investigated from behavioral sciences. So why do we need sleep? Because actually the physical and psychological effects of lack of sleep are devastating, because lack of sleep, which is considered anything less than 6 to 7 hours per day, demolishes the immune system, therefore doubles the risk of cancer, increases chances of developing Alzheimer's disease, profoundly disrupts blood sugar levels, increases coronary artery blocking, contributes to major psychiatric conditions like bipolar disorder, anxiety, suicidality. The desire to eat increases, fat is accumulated, and overall, lack of sleep, systematic lack of sleep, reduces one's lifespan. Therefore, from these effects, we can understand why we would need sleep to be better, actually, but that's more or less what we know, apart also from the cognitive effects of sleep, where emotion regulation and memory consolidation, the two basic, very important processes that take place only during night sleep. Also, psychological studies of sleep deprivation in humans have shown that even the smallest amount of sleep deprivation, like depriving yourself of like 2 hours of sleep per night, reduce ability to concentrate. Even with 1 night of sleep deprivation, we can see that effect. With 3 to 4 hours of deprivation per night, we can see that sleepiness is increased. Mood disturbances, because emotion regulation takes place while we're sleeping, poor performance on vigilance tests, and with 2 to 3 days of continuous sleep deprivation, not complete sleep deprivation, but reduced sleep hours, actually, we can see that the people are falling into micro sleeps, like naps of 2 to 3 seconds, which is, of course, extremely dangerous, for example, for driving. And same thing with chronic sleep deprivation for people who sleep about less than 7 hours per day. There is a larger effect of sleep deprivation in the executive functions as opposed to other cognitive functions such as logical deduction, physical strength, motor performance. So assimilation of changing information, updating, innovative lateral insightful thinking, reference memory, and cognitive inhibition all reduce with sleep deprivation. Therefore, we can see how, and of course, emotional irrationality, given the emotion regulation functioning during night sleep, where 1 night sleep deprivation amplifies activation in the amygdala by an enormous 60%. And keep in mind that the amygdala triggers strong emotions of fight, of anger, of rage. Therefore, the bad moods when we are sleep deprived. The prefrontal cortex, on the other hand, is the one responsible to inhibit such activity. However, its activity decreases dramatically with sleep deprivation. So we have both physical and psychological devastating effects of sleep deprivation, and therefore concluding that sleep is necessary for us. Now, how do we investigate sleep and dreams? Unfortunately, or fortunately, maybe, we still don't have a machine that can picture, that can show on a screen what the person is dreaming of. what has been used so far is EEG, EOG, and EMG, or even sometimes MRI. So polysomnography is being used, revealing the brain waves, therefore separating the sleep in four different stages with different brain characterized by different brain waves each. The electroculogram, which records the eye movements, showing this fast rapid eye movement during the REM phase, which is the basic phase that we dream, not the only one, but the basic one where mostly people who will remember their dreams, those dreams will have taken place during the REM phase, and the EMG to record the sleep paralysis that takes place or should take place while we're dreaming so that we do not act out our dreams. So here we go with the neuroscience of sleep and dreams. We can see the very different brain waves during the different stages of sleep. So in alert wakefulness, but we can see the beta band mostly, but just before sleep, we can see the alpha waves emerging. In stage 1, you can see the pattern, how it goes. In stage 2, it is characterized by the so-called sleep spindles and the K complexes in the signal of the sleeper. And then in stage 3, all these things changes until you reach stage 4, deep sleep, characterized by delta waves. Now, through polysomnography, sleep has been separated in different stages, as we said, and in different sleep cycles. So going from one stage until the final, from the first stage until the final stage of sleep, that is considered a whole sleep cycle. So you can see here above number 1 that we have a sleep cycle going from stage 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, then again emerging to 3 to 1. The emergent second sleep cycle has a qualitative difference from the very first one and the following ones. The emergent stage 2 to 3 of sleep is actually the REM phase, which does not happen, of course, when you initially start falling asleep. So this goes on, going from 2, 3, 4 to 4, 3, 2, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, until it's time to wake up. So from stage 2, you go to stage 1. And these are the sleep cycles. We know that in the emergent stage 1 of sleep, the one that comes after the first sleep cycle, as we said, we have the REM sleep, where all the other stages are characterized by non-REM sleep, which shares also, apart from the eye movements, other qualitative differences in the signal, actually, that is transmitted from our brains as compared to the REM phase. In stages 3 and 4, we have the slow wave sleep, especially in stage 4. Now, during the REM phase, we know that we have the rapid eye movements, loss of core muscle tone, the sleep paralysis as it's called, low amplitude, high frequency EEG, increased cerebral and autonomic activity, muscles that may twitch, and clitoral or penile erection. So seeing this picture, one could imagine that also this person is actually awake, whereas they're not, but they're actually sleeping, which is really peculiar. And this is what makes investigating dreams so fascinating, isn't it? Now, the REM phase is considered the main phase, as we said, that people dream, the most vivid dreams at least, and the ones that are usually recorded in memory, if any. Now, 80% of awakenings from REM sleep yield reports of story-like dreams instead of random images. Also, from sleep studies, we have seen that external stimulation can be incorporated into the REM phase and into one's dream. For example, loud noises, smells can also be incorporated. Another fun fact is that dreams run on real time, actually, that everyone dreams, everyone, no matter their intellectual abilities or disabilities. Penile erections are not a result of erotic dreams, but they are rather a physical reaction while you are dreaming of almost anything. And sleepwalking and talking are less likely to occur actually while dreaming. And why is that? Because especially during the REM phase, we have that loss of core muscle tone, exactly so as not to sleepwalk. But as we said, we also dream in different sleep stages, not only in the REM phase, and that's where probably sleepwalking and talking occurs. So out of these research findings, we ask, is dreaming just a byproduct of REM brain activity? Evolutionary speaking, some people have suggested that indeed, dreaming is just a byproduct, that evolution is yet take away while the human species is evolving, because what's the use of that? However, it seems that there are many uses of dreaming. Let's follow through. First of all, dreaming is a psychotic state, actually, where you have visual hallucinations, that is visual stimulation. Actually, you see images with no visual stimulation. You have delusions, you believe things, you believe that story. Disorientation, affective labile, and amnesia, most of the times for most of our dreams, which quite resemble a psychotic state, doesn't it? We dream throughout sleep. However, dreaming as bizarre, hallucinatory, strongly emotional, motoric experience is only experienced during the REM phase, according to participants' reports. Therefore, we can see that the REM phase has a qualitative difference in its dreams as compared to other states of sleeping where you also dream. What about the brain activity during REM dreaming? Where brain activity seems to increase in visual spatial areas, and that makes sense because we see images while we're sleeping. In the motor cortex, that's why probably we feel like we're moving our limbs, we're moving our body. We actually feel that during our vivid dreams. Increased activity in the hippocampus, responsible for recording mainly autobiographic memory. That's why we have a sense of self, most probably, while we're dreaming. And also increased activity in the amygdala and the cingulate cortex, responsible generally for emotion generation and emotional processing. Whereas brain activity decreases in the left and right prefrontal cortex, responsible for control, thought control, behavioral control, rational thought, decision-making, and planning. Probably that's why our most vivid dreams are also so irrational. Therefore, given these qualitative differences of REM dreams as opposed to other dreams, we could assume that there may be more to dreams than this. Actually, the Nobel Prize winner, here it is. Yes. The Nobel Prize winner, Auguste Kekulé, suggested that let us dream, let us learn from dreams, gentlemen, and then perhaps we shall learn the truth, because actually he discovered the chemical structure of benzene in his dreams. Now, the psychoanalytic perspective of dreams is that dreams are the royal road to knowledge of the unconscious, given the importance of the unconscious for the psychoanalytic approach. So they view dreaming as the guardian of sleep, which is designated to keep the person asleep. That's why they suggest we have the so-called sleep paralysis. That's why we have the irrationality that characterizes our dreams, so that anything that you may think or feel or experience during your dreams will not wake you up, because you need to stay asleep, right? So they suggest that given that our everyday lives are filled with emotions, drives and wishes and experiences that we cannot handle sometimes, we repress them into our unconscious, and these are made inaccessible to the conscious, conscious cognitive activity by the so-called sensor, because they are things that we cannot actually handle. Therefore, these are all kept in the unconscious. However, when you're asleep, that automatic repression of the sensor on your repressed wishes and experiences and so forth reduces. which could be the prefrontal cortex, for example, that activity there that is reduced. And therefore, we have these irrational dreams where you can dream of anything and it is not being criticized by you. The motives, the repressed motives, for example, all of these strive to surface while you are asleep. Therefore, if there wasn't for the quality of the REM phase, then we would wake up from all these repressed motives and wishes that come into mind while we're dreaming. However, we thank the REM phase for not doing so. Otherwise, we would all be sleep deprived. Now, so they view dreaming as a pressure release valve, that instead of holding all these repressed and very strong wishes and motives in your unconscious forever, thankfully you have dreaming where you can release some of them and therefore experience reduction of stress due to these repressed wishes and motives. We can assume that wonderful emotion regulation that takes place while we're dreaming is actually what the psychoanalysts are suggesting, dreaming as a pressure release valve. So the psychoanalytic perspective suggests that dreams are actually the manifest content, what we actually remember, plus the latent content, the hidden meaning of the dreams. And this is what dreams are. Therefore, the job of the psychoanalyst is to reveal through the manifest content, actually the latent content. And that latent content can only be most accurately be given, can be attributed actually to our dreams by ourselves and not any other specialist. However, the psychoanalyst or any other psychotherapist is there to guide you through that process. Now, the psychoanalytic approach suggests that there is a transformation of all of these repressed wishes and experiences and motivations, so that the latent material does not appear as raw data into your dream, because still again, although dreaming is a protected environment for someone who is dreaming, that latent material could not be handled and the person would wake up. Therefore, we have that so-called dream work through displacements, through condensations, through the representations, as the psychoanalysts name them, which brings about the actual manifest dream. There is no psychological work, they suggest, while we're dreaming, but actually dreaming is a necessary byproduct of maintaining sleep. Although a byproduct, however, it is useful in the psychoanalysis as a tool to enter one's unconscious. Now, the modern alternative to Freud's explanation of dreams is the so-called activation synthesis hypothesis, where our dreams are due to the cortex's attempt to make sense of random brain activity. However, we probably do know from the therapeutic effects of dreams nowadays, especially in PTSD patients, that indeed dreams can be actually therapeutic. So they're probably not only a byproduct. Another assumption about dreams, which is based on neurosciences, is viewing dreams as a state of proto-consciousness. Actually, can I dare to say that this is my own assumption once I read the theory of proto-consciousness, which I fell in love with, developed by Hobson, which suggests that we have primary consciousness and secondary consciousness. Now, in primary consciousness, we have that clear awareness, perception plus emotion, whereas in our secondary consciousness, it is dependent on language, self-reflective awareness, that is, abstract thinking, volition, metacognition. So when we are infants, we are characterized by primary consciousness only. However, as we grow older, as our brain grows older, we develop secondary consciousness as well. Most of our awakened world is characterized by secondary consciousness and vice versa for our dream world or mind wandering or any other states of consciousness. Now, the big differences between being awake and being asleep in a non-REM or even in a REM phase regarding proto-consciousness is that when we're awake, we have both primary and secondary consciousness. When we're asleep in a non-REM phase, we experience diminished awareness. Therefore, our secondary consciousness definitely has decreased a lot, but also our primary consciousness is decreasing. And while we're dreaming in a REM phase, it seems that perceptions and emotions of primary consciousness are being processed and generated. However, these are generated only internally. Therefore, to recap, when we're awake, we have both types of consciousness, primary and secondary. In deep sleep, both are largely reduced, and especially secondary consciousness. And in REM dreaming, the secondary consciousness is largely reduced. However, primary consciousness seems to be very active. Now, what are the facts that can support that? Existing neuronal mechanisms must be exposed to experience to fully develop. And we have observed that during the REM phase, there is minimal inhibition throughout the brain. Probably this also can explain partly the irrationality of dreams. Also, sleep studies have observed that the younger a person is, the more the REM phase that they fall into while they are sleeping. Therefore, there must be some very important value to the REM phase for the brain's development. There is also that REM rebound effect in sleep deprivation studies, where the more someone is deprived of their sleep, no matter their age, the faster they will fall into the REM phase the next time that they sleep. And they will stay there in the REM phase for much longer than usually. Therefore, we can clearly see that there is a significant usefulness of the REM phase for the person's brain. Now, we also see that REM brain activation happens very early in life, from the moment that the baby is born, during which the brain is very active because neurons need to be connected to each other and to form networks according to experiences. And a newborn baby normally spends most of their time asleep. If these neuronal connections were not shaped while they were asleep, then most probably it would take them much, much longer for their brain to develop. Therefore, we can assume that the REM dreaming can be considered a state of proto-consciousness, which helps the brain to develop its networks, to consolidate the experiences of the day and further shape its neuronal networks accordingly. So, to recap, REM dreaming is characterized by primary consciousness mainly, which is characterized in turn by perception and emotion, and the absence of secondary consciousness. There are certain brain structures that must be activated for secondary consciousness to take place, and these are largely inhibited while in the REM phase. However, when we are awake or when we are aware that we're dreaming, that is during lucid dreaming, these brain areas responsible for the so-called secondary consciousness again become very much activated. So I'll finish up with this slide. Lucid dreaming is one of the most interesting, to my humble opinion, phenomena, where it is an intermediate state between awake and dreaming, where we have secondary conscious functions present while we're dreaming. Therefore, we could almost safely assume, if we accept the theory of proto-consciousness regarding dreams, that both primary and secondary consciousness are activated during lucid dreaming. It is a rather hybrid state of the brain where we observe increased synchronized activation of both posterior and frontal brain areas, whereas we said most frontal brain areas are not very much activated while we're normally dreaming. So that was it for the neuroscience of dreams. I know it wasn't much, but thankfully there is a lot of mystery still there to be discovered. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aristea. Are there any questions? No. So thank you very much for this. Let me remind you that now from 11:30 to 2 o'clock, we have, let's say, a hands-on, easy hands-on training and experiments on the Neuroscience lab in Proxonic Oromila building, which is 24 Proxonic Oromila Street in Thessaloniki. Then in the room on the first floor, in Alpha 2 room, we have some presentations about executive functions during healthy aging and the role of eye blink rate. We have also about the eye blink rate in multiple sclerosis, and also about more clinical stuff about tailoring neuropsychological batteries, let's say, for clinical purposes. And also, then we have another two presentations afterwards, again, physical, that has to do, that are around, let's say, neuromarketing, and it has to do with eye tracking tests with and the interaction with the website validation of and evaluation of the website, and the brain reaction on environmental, social, and corporate governance, the ECG. And this is a cross-generational EEG study that is going to be presented. All of this will be, let's say, physical, and everything of this presentation is on the first floor of the Proxonic Oromila building, as I said, on Alpha 2 room. So, just to inform you, there are not other, let's say, online presentations for today. You can join us again online tomorrow. So if you try to join, now the webinar will be closed, so you cannot join. And I hope to see you again, all of you, tomorrow. Have a nice day, and I hope to see you all in Proxonic Oromila building today. Bye-bye.
Bye, Manos.